Hello, welcome. My name is Damon Brown of DamonBrown.net. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. And welcome to the show. It's called the Bring Your Worth Show. I come here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, live here on Amazon Live, as well as on YouTube and on LinkedIn every single Wednesday. And then I do the recorded shows on Monday and Friday. But you can catch me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm based here in Vegas. If you subscribe at the YouTube link, which I can throw up in a second, then you'll be able to get a notification whenever I'm live. But thank you so much for the support and all that good stuff. A lot of exciting stuff happening right now. If you want to learn more about me, it's at DamonBrown.net. And then I have my new book, still new, called Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. If you're watching on Amazon Live, you can click the link. If you're interested in learning more about your particular strengths or learning more about the framework I use in my coaching, you can take the free quiz here at buildfromnowquiz.com. Almost 1,000 people have taken it, so it's gone on levels way beyond what I was expecting when the book came out in January. But the book is available on all the platforms. It is from my own publishing imprint called, as you can imagine, Bring Your Worth, just like the name of this show. And yeah, so if you want to support the indies, check this out. Grab it on any platform that you like. It's available on Apple Books. It's available on Amazon. It's available on hardcover on Amazon. It's available from Barnes & Noble's, your indie bookstore. You can ask them for, you can actually order online, which is super cool. That's actually a new development for my imprint. So if you want to support the indies, come through, check it out. And if you want to get more insight into the book, you can take the quiz at buildfromnowquiz.com. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you can learn more about the YouTube channel at youtube.com/BrownDamon. I'll go and throw that up for y'all. And then you can subscribe there. If you subscribe, then that lets me know that you're enjoying the free programming. Gives me a little bit more motivation. Also, if you subscribe, you're able to do comments and likes and shares and all those things. And it gives me more insight into what y'all want to talk about in the future. We've been going strong for, I think I launched on December 22nd. As far as doing the Bring Your Worth show, which again is at youtube.com/BrownDamon. So the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I don't know the days of the week anymore. Monday, Wednesday, Friday setup. But the show actually started, I want to say in October. So we have to have some type of anniversary. It has to be like 6 months, 7 months, coming to y'all every single Wednesday. So it's been quite a haul, but it's been great connecting with all y'all. If you have any questions or something that you want me to address, again, you can throw it in the comments here on Amazon Live, wherever you happen to be watching. And if you want to support the show, come through and subscribe at youtube.com/BrownDamon. So like I said, my main thing is helping side hustlers, solopreneurs, and other people that are called, I call non-traditional entrepreneurs. So people who are really trying to get their shine, but they might be underfunded, under-resourced, overlooked, etc. You see where I'm going with this. And so the discussions that I have, particularly with the live sessions that we've been having every Wednesday, is a discussion that's talking about this greater, the toolbox that you need. And I've done 4 TED Talks. Again, you can check them out. Believe it or not, I can't talk. Check them out at youtube.com/BrownDamon. I've done 4 TED Talks. I've done 25 books. Build From Now is my 25th. And I've coached hundreds of folks. And what I really want to do with this show is help you by opening up my toolbox and giving you, as we say, as much game as possible. And so with that in mind, today we're going to talk about specifically how to build and start and keep a new habit. It's April right now, as of this recording. If you're watching live, obviously you know that this is around the time, including February, but we talked about that back then. But there's also that time where the first quarter of the year is done. What do we plan on the year looking like? And it's kind of that time where, a fourth or a third into the year, and it's like, are we where we expected it to be? Are we doing as well as we expected to be? Those habits that we looked into for 2021, which is the year that's being recorded, are we actually tapping those? And for a lot of us, it's a mixed bag. I know it is for me. There's some habits that I had great coming into January that are like virtually gone right now. And I have other habits that are way stronger than I expected. And so there's a good time to kind of reassess and re-engage with our habits and how we're going to make impact in the world. I mean, again, the year is almost a third of the way through. There's a time to do that recheck-in. So I'm going to recommend 3, 4, and including a 3 and 4 book, 3 and 4, 3 to 4 books that might help you on your journey, and actually one that's actually from me that might help you on your journey as well. Before I get into that, I just learned that my new interview with Srinivas Rao is on the Unmistakable Creative Podcast. The link is right there. Shout out to Srini. I talked to him about a month ago, and it just went live, about Built From Now, the new book, about my journey from becoming a journalist to becoming an author, to becoming a public speaker, to becoming an entrepreneur, and then finally becoming a coach, and now an international public speaker, and talking about that journey. Also talking about the culture clashes and the challenges that I have with the rest of the environment that I'm in, whether it's challenges with family, because I'm a stay-at-home dad, my kids are 8 and 5, challenges with family, challenges with me trying to make impact in the world, all these things that a lot of us can relate to. And so I think you'd enjoy it. We talked for about an hour. I really enjoyed talking with him. If you have a long memory, or if you know my work, I actually talked with Srini before my first serious bestseller, before The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur came out. In fact, I did a book with TED Books called Our Virtual Shadow. That was shortly before my sons were born. So I want to say that was 2012, 2013. And it became a really popular book. He ended up inviting me on the podcast. So we've known each other for almost 10 decades. So it's almost like a homecoming too. So look at it as two old friends having a drink and having really honest conversations. Check it out. Again, it just went live right before this conversation. And lastly, I am keynoting the Entrepreneur Conference that's happening May 1st and 2nd. You can use the code Damon15 to get a nice discount, and that's actually from me. It's actually a very affordable conference. I think it's still sub $99. But it might be going up as the event is 2.5 weeks away. So I'm getting my keynote together as we speak. The keynote's going to be based on my previous book called Bring Your Worth: How to Level Up Your Creative Power, Value, and Service to the World. And really talking about, the conference is really based on, or focused on, people who want to make impact as a writer, but also don't want to go into the starving artist category. In fact, they understand their worth and they want to get more of that. I have several different passive income streams. I've coached hundreds of people. I'm going to be taking all that insight, including selling my startup several years ago, taking all that insight, putting into a really intense keynote. If you've seen any of my other keynotes, again, at youtube.com/BrownDamon, you have an idea as far as what's coming. I'd love for you to be part of the intimate audience there. So remember, that's happening the 3 weekends from now, actually. And it's May 1st and 2nd, the author conference. And then if you use the code Damon15, you'll get a nice discount on that. All right. So the question is, how do you keep and start a habit? And I say that way on purpose, because we talk about we want to have better habits, which is cool. But we actually have to call the habits that we don't want anymore. And that requires us actually going through the thought process and saying, what am I trying to do? And then based on what I'm trying to do, what am I trying to keep? So the first couple of books I'm going to recommend are about actually calling away, the weeds from the garden, for lack of a better term. So the first book I'll recommend with that would be Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I've mentioned it a few times on the show. There's a reason for that. Essentialism is actually I have the hardcover here. There's so many books that I have digitally now. It's hardcover. Beautiful book, by the way. I read it probably every other year, every 18 months or something like that. And he really talks about the personal as well as the objective way, the tactical way that you can call the necessary stuff from your life. Excuse me. One really good example that he gives, and I'll throw the video up here. I ended up profiling it in a show from probably about a month ago called How Bill Gates, Warren Buffett Got Rich with Time. And he talks about the power that they're able to find with time. And time is just one of the many resources. I talk about that in Built From Now, where that's one of the 4 resources that we all have. How are we going to allocate our time? How are we going to allocate our energy? How are we going to allocate our agility, our ability to adapt? And how are we going to allocate our focus? If we're talking about time, there's a nice little hack that he talks about, again, in and Essentialism, but I actually highlight it in this show from about a month ago. It's worth checking out, where the people that he found to be the most productive or the most positive, let's not even use productivity, because that's, again, as I say in Build From Now, it's a loaded word. The people that he found to be the most productive and the most thoughtful with their time, whatever tasks they had on their agenda, they will multiply it by pi. So 3.14. So if someone contacted me and say, hey, I want to have a 20-minute meeting with you, Damon, then I automatically assume that will take up an hour of my time, because then you have to schedule the meeting. Then we have to get if you're doing a Zoom thing, you have to get that part set up. So that takes like 5 minutes. Then it's the pleasantries, and it's the conversation. And then if it's the conversation that we actually want to lead to action steps, then we need to write down the action steps. And then we actually have to schedule the next meeting or do those action steps. 1 hour for 20 minutes, right? We found this a lot as journalists, because my background is journalism. We found this a lot as journalists, as writers. If we think something's going to take, a day to edit, it's going to take 3 days. And so if you multiply whatever you have on your to-do list by 3.14, because it's easy to remember, then you automatically start to be smarter with your time. I get into it way more in depth with how Bill Gates, Warren Buffett got rich with time. And I have like a 5-minute segment in there. I break it down. I share a lot of the insights, again, from Essentialism. But if you're looking to get better habits and to keep them, you got to figure out what to get rid of first. Essentialism is a great place to start. Look at my previous episodes where I've talked about the book way more extensively. But again, the Bill Gates and Warren Buffett one is a good place to start. All right, so Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I think he has a new book out called Effortless. And I mentioned it about 2 weeks ago. I think it just already came out. I have not grabbed it yet, but I can't wait to check it out. Essentialism has been on my shelf for going on a decade, probably since I became a parent. So good stuff. All right, another book I'd recommend if you're looking to call out those habits that you don't want anymore or refine them, is A World Without Email by Cal Newport. You might know him from the book Deep Work, which I've mentioned in my previous books, but he has a new book out called A World Without Email. And you might think it's about tech and why tech is bad. That's not the thing. The problem that we have often is that we're trying to do so many different things that we're not able to focus on this particular thing that we're doing right now. So if you have a bad habit of, say, not eating well, then it might be because you're reading your social media feed while you're eating, and so you're not thinking about how your body's feeling, right? Really simple example. Cal gets into this, and I got an early version of the book, and I actually got a chance to talk with Cal. I'll throw the link in a second. But it was refreshing where it wasn't a screed against technology at all. It was more like we're so used to what he calls the collective hive mind. And I'll throw up the interview in a second where I interview him one-on-one. But the collective hive mind, where we're so used to getting feedback from other people and from other things that we're not able to sit still, right? And so if you, going back to the writing analogy, if you have to have a paper you have to write, or you have an article you have to write, or you have a pitch you have to write because you're pitching your startup, whatever, you're doing that. And then 5 minutes in, you're like, oh, well, I wonder if a new email came in, or let me just go and check on my social media or whatever. And suddenly that distraction's coming in. That's become so much of a norm, particularly here in the Western states or in the Western hemisphere, Western culture, whatever term you want to use. That's become the norm. And now it's Slack. Now it's TikTok. We can have this conversation 10 years from now. As I said in a recent video, we can have this conversation 10 years from now. Just replace, 10 years ago, it would have been so much Facebook and Twitter and this. And now it's like TikTok and Slack. It's still the same song. He breaks down the history of this, and this history actually goes way further. Even before I was born, he excavates it, gets really deep into it. I highly recommend the book, particularly if you like his previous book, Deep Work, which really put him on the map. I have a one-on-one conversation with Cal. It's about 25 minutes. I so enjoyed the conversation. There was so much insight that came from it, and he was very generous with discussing things and answering my questions, which were pretty broad-based, because this is a deep dive for me, because I love talking about productivity, how we can create, how we can nourish the world, etc. So it was very much a good one-on-one conversation. how email sucks our time. I think it went live on the Bring Your Worst show probably about a month and a half ago, around the time that A World Without Email came out. So please check it out if you're curious about his work. Feel free to check out the interview and then grab the book, or grab the book and then check out the interview. Again, I had the interview with him after I read the book in like 2 nights. And so even if you've read the book or you want to read the book, before you listen to the interview, feel free to do that. There's going to be a ton of insight that's not in the book. So be sure and check that out on the channel. Again, if you want to get the regular stuff on my YouTube channel for the Bring Your Worst show, be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/BrownDamon. It's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And again, I'm coming to you live every Wednesday, and every Monday and Friday we get the shows like the aforementioned episode that's happening with Cal Newport. It's live. You can click on there now and check it out after we finish our conversation. And remember, it's free. So be sure to subscribe. It helps support the channel, and it also makes sure that you don't miss an episode, which you don't want to because there's so much good stuff that's happening. Not even from me, but from some of the guests that I have coming through, like the one-on-one with Cal Newport. All right, so we talked about essentialism, and so I make sure I light it up here. So we talked about essentialism. We also talked about A World Without Email. The pattern with these 2 books, which I think they're really good companions, is that they're about getting rid of things versus adding things. And if you're going to build new habits and keep new habits, first you have to figure out what you're going to get rid of, and second you have to figure out what habits you want to build. These 2 are, pardon my pun, essential when it comes to this. So essentialism and A World Without Email. There's actually a book of mine that actually would fit into this conversation. It's called The Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. Some of you that are watching have already bought it. This one was a bestseller, wow, 3 to 5 years ago. This compilation, the whole trilogy came out in 2017, so that's 4 years ago. And then the original book, the tiny one, it's like half the size of this, came out in 2016, so we're going on the 5th anniversary of that. But one of the things I talk about in The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur is that you have to make smaller steps, and that's how you're able to make the most progress. That's literally why it's called The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. If you don't know my background, I experienced that when my wife and I had our first kid, our first son, and then she went back to work about 4 months in, because the usual maternity leave here in America. And at the same time, I actually started my first startup. First time entrepreneur, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. That happened at the exact same time. And that first startup was called So Quotable. I ended up launching that while I was taking care of my son during the day. So I wake up at 3:15 in the morning, work from 3:15 a.m. to 6 a.m. I'm even getting GERD just thinking about what I was going through 7 years ago. But went through that, got the startup off the ground. That ended up leading to me doing my first TED Talk, which again is available at youtube.com/BrownDamon. So all my TED Talks are available there for free. You can subscribe and check out all my good stuff, hopefully good stuff, but stuff I'm definitely giving you with good intentions. And then that ended up leading to a friend of a friend connecting with me, and then myself, the friend of a friend, and then another friend of his, all ended up becoming co-founders and bootstrapping an app called Cuddler, which connected people for hugs. We launched the app. The app went to #1 within a week. We had 100,000 users all around the world. We had 250,000 by the time that we ended up selling the app, about a year after that, around the time that my son turned 2. And so all the insight and all the things I experienced, even speaking at TED, I spoke at TED twice during that period of time, even speaking at TED and all that, I put that all into The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. But that comes from the standpoint of my son and my family were my #1 priority. And the success I had with So Quotable, again, the first app, particularly with Cuddler, you know, we're on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and well, the daytime talk shows, nighttime talk shows, we were really a big buzz. And all that happened around my family. So it wasn't like me putting my family to the side and then I'm going to do this startup. It was like, no, here's my family. Everything is built around it. To do that, you have to, #1, know what your priorities are. But then #2, do things in a bite-sized way. I couldn't go to extremes. I love going to extremes. I love it. I love it. I love going for it, jumping in stuff head first. I learned that that wasn't the way to, that was not my path to success at the time. I talk about that in the Bites of the Entrepreneur. Again, if you're struggling to build new habits that will get you towards the success that you want, you have to start small. I talk about that in there. Otherwise, I would not be recommending my own book on this program, or I'm recommending other people's books. I'd rather do that. But this one hits close to home. And if you want that insight and you missed it the first time, check out the book. It's available on all the platforms, again, through my imprint. I also do the audiobook to it. And there's bonus stuff in the audiobook. You can click the link right there on Amazon to get the audiobook, etc. And then you can get the paperback and other things over at damonbrown.net if you want a signed copy, as well as the previous book, Bring Your Worth, and the newest book, Built From Now. So I have some specials going on over there if you want to get it directly from me at damonbrown.net. So the choice is yours, but come through, check it out. So once you figure out what you need to do, then you need to start implementing it. And this was a favorite book of mine. Man, I heard about this book. This book probably came out like 10, 15 years ago. And I was like, this sounds good. And he's a fellow journalist. I think he's a writer for the New York Times. He was at the time. He did this, and he did another book called Stronger, Faster, Harder, I think it was called. Kind of like the Daft Punk song, Rest in Peace to Daft Punk. But I didn't get into it until literally like a year ago when I was researching Built From Now. It's actually a really good book, and it has that simple pop cultural sensibility where you just grab it and go. I listened to the audiobook. I linked to the audiobook here. And my favorite part of the book, and there was a lot of good stuff in here. Again, it's really easy to digest. My favorite part was where he talked about keystone habits. So a keystone is where you have this particular thing and it has a reflection on everything. And someone says, oh my God, I love these books. Thank you, Shanna Ray. I appreciate that. So I'm glad I'm giving you some value here. Sorry, I have some notifications coming on my phone too. And so a keystone, and I'm originally from the East Coast, close to Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania is known as a keystone state. A keystone is the stone that's right in the middle of an arc. And then there's the rest of the arc. If you think of like, not an arc, an arch. Can't even say it, an arch. A keystone is in the middle. You ever notice an arch and you're like, how does it actually stay like up? That's because the keystone is in place. You move that keystone, everything crumbles. I love what he talked about this, where if you have this particular keystone and you get that done, then the rest of it stays strong. For instance, a keystone habit might be, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I don't recommend it, but I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. So if you wake up at 5 a.m., then suddenly you're able to get more work done because you're waking up early. You're able to eat better because you're not in a rush, because you don't have to rush to get to work. You might even get to exercise in because the sun's not up yet. You're up anyway. You might be able to take a longer shower, etc. So you find those habits that are keystone, this one thing, and then it expands from there, right? That's just one gem. I think the keystone habit thing was like, I don't know, a small chapter in there, maybe a few pages, but that blew my mind. So again, the book is full with gems. I recommend the previous books because you need to clear out what you got. Again, call what you got first. But once you call it, figure out what those keystone habits are and figure out where you can make the most impact. My last recommendation is from BJ Fogg, and it's a book called Tiny Habits. Now, I've actually interacted very briefly with BJ online, and I actually did a column about him, or about his philosophy in ink, and I did a video related to, which I'll show you in a second. But BJ's philosophy is really well known within Silicon Valley. I believe he's a professor at Stanford, but I know at least he had a class up there for a long time. I think it was one of the most popular classes, which is saying a lot for Stanford because they got some heavy hitters over there. But the basic concept is that you have to integrate these habits in a way where you can have them be reachable. And another fellow named James Clear, with a book called Atomic Habits, talks about this as well. But BJ actually talks about it from a professorial standpoint and from certified research, which I so appreciate. So if you end up just doing something once, then you're going to get a little bit of traction on it, but probably not much. But if you improve something 1% every single time you do it, by the time, say, the year is done, then you would have improved by 37%. You can look at it, and shout out to Laura Vanderkam, a friend of mine who I've mentioned on the show, who's an expert at time management. You can look at it more like compound interest, where if you put $1 in the bank or the credit union, whatever, and you get 1% interest on it, by the time the cycle ends, you have $1.01. But if you don't touch it, cycle happens again, you have $1.01. But then it happens again, and you see where it goes. And then at a certain point, you can pull out the maths for this. At a certain point, then you're actually going to double your money. But you haven't done anything. You've let time do it. He gets into this with tiny habits, way more articulate than I can be, but he gets into that, and I think it's such a smart take on it. I'm reading the book as we speak, but I had a conversation with him, so it's like I felt like I knew where he was going with the book enough to recommend it. And I think the book's done fairly well, so a lot of you are digging it too. If you want more insight into the habits and things that you can do to make your habits better, check out an oldie but goodie that I did. I think I did it the first week of January. How to make and keep a New Year's habit or resolution. Again, it's on the Bring Your Worth channel at youtube.com/BrownDamon. Be sure and subscribe so you won't miss anything. Check out that episode. I talk about James Clear on there. I think I talk about BJ Fogg as well, but it's kind of a classic episode. Classic, considering I've had the show for like 4 months, but it's as classic as we could get. All right. So from the top, you want to remember the excellent book, Essentialism. Start with getting rid of stuff before you try to add on a new habit. Or you might be able to transform that current habit you have that you don't want into a new habit, which they talk about in almost all these books. Really good way to look at it. If you're going to go deeper into the conversation about essentialism, be sure and take a look at my Bring Your Worth episode at how Bill Gates, Warren Buffett got rich with time. And I talk about the pie thing, 3.14, that smart people use to make the most of their time. A World Without Email, highly recommended. Again, I talked with Cal a couple months ago. I love the book. It's not about technology. It's about how we use our time and, frankly, manage our brain. If you want to hear a one-on-one conversation with Cal and I for about a half an hour, check out Why Email Sucks Our Time. Again, a really fun conversation. I love talking with Cal. You can check out my own book, The Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, which talks about my journey, how I was able to do 2 successful startups while being the primary caretaker of my wife and I's first son. We're talking from baby to toddler. So if you want to hear about that adventure and all the insights I got from that, as well as specific tactics, check out that book as well. And then there's The Power of Habit. Again, just a little gem about keystones is powerful that I talk about at the top of the show, but he has all kinds of good stuff in there. He's a pop culture journalist just like I am, so it's super accessible, and I think it's been a bestseller for like 2 decades. So check that out for sure. And lastly, BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits. Just make incremental habits. And like I said, like compound interest, then that will build on top of each other. And those little things will move forward. If you want to catch a show about it, I have another show from the top of this year on how to make and keep a New Year's habit or resolution. All right, I think that's everything. Be sure and subscribe at youtube.com/BrownDamon. Again, the Bring Your Worth show comes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is live every Wednesday. Every week we can do it, and we've been doing it nonstop for 6-7 months. So I appreciate all the love and support. If you want to catch me elsewhere, I'm keynoting the Authorpreneur Conference at theauthorconference.com, May 1st and 2nd. Be sure and use the code. If you want to hear a bigger conversation over at the Unmistakable Creative Podcast, I went live this morning. And if you want to learn more about Build From Now, take the free quiz at buildfromnowquiz.com. I think that's everything. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. If you want to learn more about me, I'm at DamonBrown.net. Remember that you can always bring your worth and that you can always build from now. Take care.